Jai Hind, dear children, welcome to today's biology class. Today also we are continuing with the chapter How do organisms reproduce? In the previous class, we have discussed about the asexual reproduction, different methods of asexual reproduction in simpler organisms as well as in plants, and the advantages of and disadvantages of asexual reproduction. Today, we can learn about the sexual reproduction and its importance and the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Children, we have already discussed in the introduction part of this chapter itself that sexual reproduction is the type of reproduction in which young ones are produced through the process of the formation and fusion of gametes. Two parents are involved in the sexual reproduction. One is the male parent and the other is the female parent. The male individual produces the male gamete and the female individual produces the female gamete. Mostly the male and the female parents are separate organisms, but in most of the plants and in some simpler organisms, both the sex or the male and the female may occur in a single organism. Now, we can discuss about the importance of sexual reproduction. Why is sexual reproduction more important than asexual reproduction? As you know that in asexual reproduction, the new individuals produced are from the body of a single parent. And as well, only less variations will be there because variations produced here are as a result of the errors occur during the DNA copying. No other variations take place here. But in case of sexual reproduction, the two separate individuals are involved, and as a result, combination of genes of two separate individuals takes place, and this gives rise to more variations. See, in sexual reproduction, the DNA copying will be there, the gamete formation will be there. So DNA copying, some errors will take place. During the gamete formation, also some genetic changes will be taking place, and when these gametes fuse together or during fertilization, some other variations also can take place. So, in case of sexual reproduction, more variations will be there, and these variations are important for the survival of a species under certain unfavorable conditions. As variation is more important for the survival of a species, the individual produced as a result of sexual reproduction can survive under diverse conditions, diverse environmental conditions. So, what are the significance of sexual reproduction? It produces more variation due to the separation of chromosomes at the time of gamete formation and crossing over due to meiosis and the combination of chromosomes during the fertilization. And this increased variation helped the organisms to adapt in the changed environment. The sexual reproduction play an important part in the evolution of new forms. Now, in this video, we will be learning about the sexual reproduction in plants. Sexual reproduction in plants takes place in different ways in different groups of plants. Now, here we are going to study the sexual reproduction in flowering plants or angiosperms. You have already studied last year that angiosperms are the most advanced group of plants in the plant kingdom. And these angiosperms are called flowering plants as they produce flowers which carry the sex organs, and also they produce the seeds inside the fruit. You have already studied that stem, leaf and roots are the vegetative part of a plant, and the flowers are the reproductive part of the plant. Why flowers are called as the reproductive part? Because the 6 organs are produced inside the flowers. So what is the function of a flower? The function of a flower is to produce the male and female gametes and to ensure that the fertilization will take place and the seeds are produced for the next generation of plants. Now we can learn about the structure of a flower. The structure of a flower comprises of 4 words. You have already studied in lower classes that the parts of the flower are sepals, petals, stamens and pistil. Now here is the LS of a flower. LS means longitudinal section of a flower. So here you can see a swollen part on which, or a disc-shaped part on which all the other organs are arranged, and this is called as the receptacle or thalamus. Receptacle or thalamus. So now you can see a leaf-like structure here, and this leaf-like structure is called as the sepal. In some plants, these sepals can be seen separately, or in some plants, the sepals are attached together to form the calyx. Now, internal to the sepals, you can see the brightly colored structures. The brightly colored structures called as the petal. There will be the number of petals will be different in different flowers. So all the petals together we call it as a corolla. Now, internal to this brightly sepal and the petal, they present another whorl of structures called as the stamen. This is the stamen. And this stamen consists of a stalk called filament and a swollen part called as the anther. Now, internal or this stamen is the male reproductive part of a flower, and this male reproductive part is called as the androecium. Male reproductive part of a flower is called as the androecium, and it is the stamen. Now, internal to the stamen, they present the female reproductive structure. What is the female reproductive structure? We have already studied that carpel or pistil are the female reproductive structure. So this is the female reproductive structure. It is called as the pistil or carpel. Pistil or carpel. And this female reproductive structure is called as the gynoecium. Now, this pistil has 3 parts that you can study in detail. So, now, what are the different parts of the flower? Or what is the structure of the flower? The flower consists of a disc-shaped structure called as a receptacle, on which the leaf-like structure is called sepals, and the brightly colored petals are arranged. And internal to these petals, there is a layer of stamen or the male reproductive structure, and internal to that structure, there is a female reproductive structure called as a gynoecium. Male gametes are produced inside this male reproductive structure called stamen, and the female gamete or egg cells are produced inside this female reproductive structure called carpel or pistil. So, this is the structure of a flower. Now, what is the function of sepal? Sepal is a protective layer in the stage of buds. Before the flower blooms, it will be in a bud stage. So, in that stage, the sepal provides protection for that particular bud. You can see that in rose flowers or hibiscus flowers, you can see the bud is completely covered with the green structure. So, that is the sepal. So, in the bud stage of the flowers, The sepals provide protection for the flower buds. Now, next, what is the function of petal? The petals are the most brightly colored structures of a flower. The function of these petals is to attract the insects or birds or any other organisms. We also get attracted by the brightly colored flowers, no? So the insects are attracted or the birds are attracted to the flowers, and this helps for the pollination purpose. Now, the stamen, the function of the stamen is to produce the male gametes, and the function of the pistil or the carpel is to produce the female gametes. So this is all about the structure of flower. Here you can see a hibiscus flower. So I will show you the parts of the flower. So this is called as the pedicel or the stalk of the flower, on which it is attached to the stem. Now from here you can see another stalk or a disc-shaped structure called as the receptacle or thalamus. Now here you can see the green colored structures called as the sepals. So these are the sepals. So in hibiscus flower, these sepals, so you can see this. The sepals are attached together and form the calyx. So this is the sepal calyx. And internal to the calyx, you can see the bright colored petals. See how many petals are there? 5 petals are there. So this is the next layer. This is the first outer layer, and this is the next inner layer of the flower. Now, if you remove the, or if we take like this, separate the petals, you can see the stamens here. See, continuation, one tube-like structure is there, on which what are there? The stamens. Several stamens are there. So, if we take the inner structure, internal to that, what is present? The pistil is there, internal to that particular structure. The stamens, and when we remove the stamens, you can see the pistil. So this is the pistil. You can see the stigma here, and this portion is called as the style, and this is the ovary. So that is about the structure of flower. Now we can study about the male reproductive structure and the female reproductive structure in detail. So what is the male reproductive structure in flowers? The stamens are the male reproductive structure. Now the stamen consists of 2 parts. One is this is called as the filament. This is called as a filament, which is a stalk-like structure. And at the tip of this stalk-like structure, there present a swollen structure called as the anther. Now, inside this anther, the anther consists of pollen sacs. And inside this pollen sacs, what are produced? The male gametes are produced. Now, if you cut the anther like this, take the cross section of the anther and observe under the microscope, you can see a structure like this. So, inside this anther, there are 4 lobes are there. You can see only 2 lobes here, but other side also 2 lobes, so 4 lobes are here. Inside each lobe, what are present? The pollen sacs are present. Inside the pollen sacs, what are there? The pollen grains are produced. Now, when the flower blooms or when the flower gets matured and blooms, what happens? There forms slits in the pollen sacs, and the pollen grains will be released outside. That is, you can see when the flower blooms, you can see small yellow colored structures. When the flower blooms, you can see yellow colored dust-like structures. No? So, if we observe that structures under the microscope, you can see a structure like this. What is this? Pollen grain. This is the structure of a pollen grain. There is an outer covering and inner membrane is there. And inside this, the cytoplasm and the nucleus. Two nucleus are there. One is the generative nucleus, that is the male gamete, and another is the vegetative nucleus. So this is the structure of pollen grains, and this is the male gamete. So the male reproductive structure is called as stamen. It consists of two parts, the filament and an anther. Inside the anther there are present pollen sacs in which the pollen grains or male gametes are produced. That is about the male reproductive structure. Next you can study about the female reproductive structure organ, that is the pistil, or otherwise called as the carpel. This pistil consists of three parts. They are, the one is the top or tip portion, or the tip part is called as a stigma. And followed by the stigma, there is a tubular structure called as the style. And followed by the style at the bottom part, they are present in swollen structure called as the ovary. Inside this ovary, what is present? The female gamete contain the present ovule, which contains the female gamete. What is the structure of female reproductive organ? The female reproductive organ is the pistil or the carpel. It consists of three parts. One is the stigma. The stigma, on the stigma there are present some sugary chemical substance or some sugary sticky substances which will help the pollen grains to attach here on the stigma. So that is a function of stigma. Now, followed by the stigma is the style, tube-like structure called as style, and followed by the style is the ovary, inside which ovule is present, and inside the ovule, what is present? The female gamete or the egg cell is present, and another nucleus are also present. So this flower, you can see sepals are there, petals are there, stamens are there, and the pistil are there. Four walls are there. So this flower can be called as a complete flower. Complete flower. And as this flower contains both the sex organs, that is male sex organ and the female sex organ, we can call this complete flower as the bisexual flower, as both the male sex organs and the female sex organs are present in a single flower. So it is called as a bisexual flower. So bi means two. Both the sex organs are present in a single flower. In most of the plants, the flowers produce bisexual flowers. But see, this is a hibiscus flower. So in this hibiscus flower, both the male sex organs and the female sex organs are present, as we have seen earlier. But in case of some flowers, some plants like papaya, etc., produce the flowers which contains only single sex organs or single reproductive structures. Either male or either female sex organs will be there in a single flower. Any one of the sex organs will be there, and such flowers are called as the unisexual flowers or unisexual plants. A seed is formed when the male gamete inside the pollen grains fuse or combines with the female gamete present inside the ovule. So this is possible, or this takes place in two steps. The first one is pollination. First step is pollination, and the second step is fertilization. As you have already studied that pollination is the process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower, and this process is called as the pollination. That is, this is the anther. when the anthers release the pollen grains, it will be there in the surroundings, and this pollen grains should be transferred from the anther to the stigma of the flower. That process is known as pollination. So what is fertilization? Fertilization is the fusion of male gamete and the female gamete. So when the pollen grains reach here, this contains the male gamete, and this male gamete should reach the female gamete and fuse. Then only what takes place? Fertilization takes place, and by these two processes only, what can be possible is seed can be produced. Now we can study the process of pollination. The pollination can occur in two ways. They are self-pollination and cross-pollination. Here you can see two plants are drawn here. One plant is having the rose flower and another plant is having the violet flower, but both the plants are the same species. Now the flowers are bloomed and the pollen grains are produced in all the flowers, and there is a chance of pollination or the transfer of pollen grains. So what are the chances of pollination here? This plant is a bisexual plant. That means both the sex organs, male sex organ and the female sex organs, are there present in all the flowers. So the pollination can take place, or the transfer of pollen grain can occur from the anther of this plant, of this flower, to the stigma of that flower itself. That is, here the pollen grains are transferred from the transfer of pollen grains takes place in the same plant. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma takes place in the same flower itself. Or the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower can be transferred to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. So anyway, these two pollination occurs in the same plant itself. So such type of pollination is called as self-pollination. So what is self-pollination? When the pollination or the transfer of pollen grains takes place in the same plant or in the same flower, or the transfer of pollen grains from one flower to the another flower of the same plant occurs. That pollination is called as self-pollination. Now what is cross-pollination? Here, sometimes the transfer of pollen grains from this flower, or the pollen grains are transferred from this flower to the stigma of the flower of another plant. It may be the same species or another species. Anyway, the transfer of pollen grains takes place from one flower to the stigma of another flower of another plant. So in such cases, the pollination is called as cross-pollination. So self-pollination takes place in bisexual plants. That means it is having two reproductive structures, male and female. But the cross-pollination can take place in unisexual flowers. See, in papaya, male plant is there and female plant is there. Male plant produces the male flowers with stamens, and the female plant produces the female flowers with pistil. So that will be two different plants. So pollination can take place from the male flower to the male plant to the female plant. So that is called as cross-pollination. As this self-pollination takes place in single plant, the seeds produced as a result, or the next generation produced as a result of this self-pollination, will not show more variations. Most of the characters will be similar, as the pollination or as the male gamete and the female gamete are from the same plant. But in case of cross-pollination, what takes place? The male gamete is of one plant and the female gamete is of another plant. So, two plants are producing the next generation, and it contains so many more variations than the self-pollination, no external agents are needed. The pollen grains can simply fall on the stigma and can attach there in the same flower or in the different flowers. So no external agents are needed for this self-pollination. But cross-pollination, in case of cross-pollination, what is needed? Some other agents are needed. So, which are the agents? Now we can study about the agents which help for the pollination. So, as you have already studied in lower classes, that wind. Some light-weighted pollen grains can blow with the wind and can fall on the another flower and attach the stigma, and pollination takes place. And water. In case of water plants, the water is the agent for carrying the pollen grains, and through this water, the water flows, through this water the pollen grains flows and get attached the stigma of the another. Next, insects. Insects are the other agents. When an insect sits on the flower, one flower, the pollen grains comes attached to the body of the honeybee or any other insects. And when these insects fly to another flower to suck the honey, what happens? The pollen grains present on the body of this honeybee can attach the stigma and pollination can take place. So that's the insects. And some birds and some other animals. Animals, while they are moving, the pollen grains can in case of small herbs, the pollen grains of the flowers can get attached to the body of that particular animal, and the pollen grains from the body of these animals can get attached to another stigma of the another plant. So these are the agents that help for the cross pollination. So this is how pollination takes place in plants.
What is the difference between self-pollination and cross-pollination? We have already discussed it in the video. And here, some of the difference between the self-pollination and cross-pollination is given. You can note it down.
Now, the pollens get attached to the stigma. The male gametes present in the pollen grains is to be reached the ovary or the ovule, in which what is present? The female gamete is present. Then only what takes place? Next step, fertilization can take place. So next we can discuss about that.
Okay, thank you.